The great hall of Silvercrest blazed with 1,000 candles, their flames reflecting off polished marble and gilded columns, as the most powerful alphas in the 7 territories gathered to witness what many whispered would be the greatest humiliation in recent memory. Serafina stood alone at the entrance, her heavily embroidered veil concealing everything but her trembling hands, as waves of laughter and cruel speculation washed over her like poison. She had no pack standing behind her, no dowry to offer, no beauty to display. She was the scarred daughter of a destroyed territory, sent here as tribute to satisfy a blood debt, a bride that Alpha King Daemon Blackthorn had already made clear he found utterly beneath him. 5 minutes, Serafina whispered to herself, gripping the edges of her veil. Just 5 minutes until the binding ceremony, and then I can disappear into whatever corner of this palace he decides to throw me. Her gaze traveled across the vast hall to where King Daemon held court, surrounded by visiting alphas and their elegant daughters. His reputation preceded him the most powerful alpha in 3 centuries, blessed by the moon goddess, with strength that could crush rebellions, and a face that made even the proudest she-wolves stumble over their words. But more than that, he was known for his cruelty, his sharp tongue that could flay the confidence from anyone who displeased him. And from the moment Serafina had arrived at Silvercrest 3 days ago, he had made his displeasure abundantly clear. As if sensing her gaze, Daemon's frost-blue eyes suddenly locked with hers across the crowded hall. Even through the thick veil, she felt the weight of his stare, cold, assessing, dismissive. Then he turned deliberately to the woman beside him, the stunning Alpha's daughter from the northern reach, Valdis Stormbringer, and said something that made the entire group erupt in laughter. Valdis placed a possessive hand on his arm, her perfect features arranged in a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes. Serafina's wolf whimpered inside her, but she forced it down. She had learned long ago to ignore the ache in her chest, just as she'd learned to ignore the stares, the whispers, the way people's expressions changed when they saw what lay beneath her veil. Tonight wasn't just any royal gathering. It was specifically orchestrated as a binding ceremony, a political marriage demanded by the Council of Territories, to settle the debt her father had left when their lands fell to darkness 5 years ago. The debt that had somehow become hers to pay, despite being only 13 when the tragedy struck. Daemon's advisors had negotiated the terms. He would take her as his mate, legitimizing the absorption of her former territory into his kingdom, and in exchange, the matter would be considered settled. Well, Serafina thought bitterly, watching as Daemon threw his head back in genuine laughter at something Valdis whispered. His reputation for hating this arrangement hasn't stopped half the eligible she-wolves in the territories from attending tonight to watch my humiliation. Perhaps they came to witness the spectacle, the cursed bride being bound to the perfect king. Perhaps they came hoping he'd reject the bond at the last moment, leaving him free to choose someone worthy. Or perhaps they simply came to see if the rumors about what was hidden beneath her veil were as terrible as the whispers suggested. Miss Serafina? A soft voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Serafina turned to find Lyra, a young Omega servant with kind brown eyes, carrying a silver tray with a crystal goblet. His Majesty requested this be delivered to you. He said you might need fortification for the ceremony. The way Lyra's voice caught on fortification made it clear what Daemon actually meant, that Serafina would need to be drunk to get through binding herself to him. Even his small gestures were designed to cut. "Thank you, Lyra," Serafina said softly, accepting the goblet. The wine was deep red, almost black in the candlelight. "You've been kind to me since I arrived. I won't forget it." Lyra's eyes filled with sympathy. "You don't deserve how they treat you, miss." "Some of us can see." She stopped abruptly, as a sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Still hiding behind that veil, tribute bride?" The voice belonged to Valdis, who had detached herself from Damon's side and now stood before Serafina, with a crowd of noble she-wolves flanking her like an army. "One would think if you had anything worth seeing, you'd have shown it by now." Serafina's fingers tightened on the goblet. "One would think a true alpha wouldn't need to seek out those weaker than herself to feel powerful." Valdis's perfect smile sharpened into something dangerous. "Weaker? Is that what you think you are?" She leaned in close enough that her words were for Serafina alone. "You're not weak, little scarred thing. You're cursed. Everyone knows what happened to your territory, what you brought down on your own people. And now you'll bring that same curse here, to our king, to all of us." Before Serafina could respond, a commanding presence made them both turn. Damon had crossed the hall with the fluid grace of a predator, his towering form casting Valdis and her companions into shadow. "Valdis," he said, his voice like honey over steel, "I believe your father was looking for you. Something about the northern delegation's early departure?" Valdis's confidence faltered for just a moment before she recovered, dropping into an elegant curtsy. "Of course, Your Majesty. I was simply welcoming your bride." The way she said bride dripped with mockery. As Valdis glided away, Serafina expected Damon to follow, to leave her standing alone again. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough that she could smell pine and night air clinging to him, could feel the heat radiating from his powerful frame. "Drink your wine," he commanded, his glacial gaze fixed on her veiled face. "You'll need it." "For what?" Serafina asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "To tolerate you, or to tolerate being laughed at while bound to you?" Something flickered in his expression, surprise, perhaps, that she'd spoken to him so directly. Before he could respond, a shrill scream pierced the hall. Everyone turned toward the source. High Priestess Mora, the ancient wolf who was meant to perform the binding ceremony, stood at the altar clutching her chest, her face contorted in pain. The sacred moon crystal that should have been glowing softly on the altar had turned black as midnight, cracks spreading across its surface like spider webs. "The moon goddess rejects this union," Mora cried out, her voice carrying to every corner of the now silent hall. "The binding cannot proceed. Something is wrong, terribly wrong." The crystal shattered with a sound like breaking bone, and Priestess Mora collapsed. Chaos erupted. Serafina felt the goblet slip from her suddenly numb fingers, wine spreading across the marble like blood. Damon's hand shot out, gripping her arm with bruising force. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous, his wolf rising behind his eyes. "What curse did you bring into my hall?" But Serafina couldn't answer, because at that moment, something inside her stirred, something that had been sleeping for 5 years, since the night her territory burned. Her scars, hidden beneath the veil and the heavy ceremonial gown, began to burn like brands, and a voice that was not her own whispered through her mind, "Not yet. Not like this. Show them nothing." Guards rushed forward, forming a protective circle around the collapsed priestess while the assembled alphas and their companions pressed back against the walls, their earlier mockery transformed into genuine fear. The shattered pieces of the moon crystal lay scattered across the altar, each fragment as dark as obsidian, pulsing with an energy that made every wolf in the hall bare their teeth in instinctive warning. "Get the healers," someone shouted, but Damon's commanding voice cut through the panic. "Nobody moves." His hand still gripped Serafina's arm, tight enough that she knew there would be bruises. His other hand had gone to the ceremonial blade at his hip, not a weapon for combat, but one meant for blood oaths and binding ceremonies. Now it looked like something else entirely. High Priestess Mora, what did you see? The old woman was being helped to her feet by two younger priests, her weathered face pale as death. Her eyes, milky with age but still sharp with wolf sight, fixed on Seraphina with an expression that was part terror, part wonder. The moon crystal reveals truth, Mora rasped, one gnarled hand pointing at Seraphina. It shows what is hidden, judges what is worthy. For it to shatter like this, she paused, seeming to struggle with her words. Either this bride carries a curse so dark that the moon goddess herself rejects her presence. I told you! Valdis's voice rang out from the crowd. The cursed daughter of a cursed territory. She'll bring ruin to us all, just as she brought it to her own people. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Seraphina felt dozens of eyes on her, felt the weight of their fear and hatred pressing against her skin like physical blows. All the while, Damon's grip never loosened. Or, Priestess Mora continued, her voice gaining strength. The crystal shattered because something of such immense power stands before us that the vessel could not contain the truth of it. The hall fell silent. Even Valdis seemed taken aback. That's impossible. One of the counselors, an older alpha named Theron Ironjaw, stepped forward. We've all seen the tribute bride. She's wolfless, powerless, a broken thing from a broken bloodline. I'm not wolfless, Seraphina said quietly, surprising herself with her own boldness. Every eye turned to her. My wolf is here. She's just sleeping. Damon's laugh was harsh, bitter. Sleeping. How convenient. He released her arm abruptly, as if touching her burned him. A wolf that sleeps is a wolf that's dead or broken. Which are you, tribute bride? The question hung in the air like a blade. Seraphina met his winter blue stare through her veil, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must hear it. I don't know, she admitted, but I didn't do this. I didn't curse your crystal or your ceremony. Then what did? Theron demanded. Moon crystals don't simply shatter. They're blessed by the goddess herself, unbreakable by mortal means. Priestess Mora moved toward the altar, studying the scattered fragments with trembling hands. When she touched one, it flared with dark light, and she jerked back with a hiss. There's a prophecy, she said slowly, as if pulling the memory from some deep well. From the old times, before the territories were divided, a prophecy about the veiled moon. The veiled moon is a children's story, another council member scoffed. A tale to frighten cubs. All stories have roots in truth, Mora countered, her milky eyes never leaving the shattered crystal. The prophecy spoke of a she-wolf marked by tragedy, hidden behind veils of shame, who would be brought before the strongest alpha in a time of false peace. When the moon crystal revealed her truth, it would shatter, because no single vessel could contain what she was meant to become. And what was she meant to become? Damon asked, his voice dangerously soft. The moon's chosen? Mora whispered. The bridge between the mortal realm and the divine, the goddess's avatar on earth. Laughter erupted from multiple sources. Valdis was nearly doubled over, her perfect features twisted with mirth. Her? The moon's chosen? Look at her, she can barely stand without trembling. She's no divine avatar. She's a debt payment, nothing more. But Seraphina was no longer listening to Valdis. She was staring at Priestess Mora, at the way the old wolf's expression held none of the mockery she'd endured from everyone else. Instead, there was something like recognition in those ancient eyes. There's one way to know for certain, Theron said, his voice cutting through the laughter. Remove the veil. If she carries the moon's mark, as the old prophecies say, it will be visible. If not, he shrugged, then she's simply what we've always known her to be, a cursed bride from a cursed land. and this binding should never have been attempted. No, Seraphina said immediately, both hands flying to her veil. The binding contract didn't require. The contract is void, Damon interrupted, his voice cold as winter. The ceremony was disrupted. The crystal is shattered. If you want to remain under my protection, if you want to avoid being cast out as the curse bringer you likely are, you'll remove that veil and prove you have nothing to hide. His eyes challenged her, dared her, and Seraphina realized, with sinking certainty, that he expected her to refuse, expected her to run, that he wanted her to give him a reason to break the contract, to be rid of her entirely. She thought of Lyra's kindness, the only warmth she'd found in this cold palace. She thought of her mother's last words before the darkness took her. Survive, little moon. Survive until the truth can be spoken. Fine, Seraphina heard herself say. Her hands shook as they moved to the clasps of her veil. But when you see what's beneath, remember that you demanded this, all of you. The hall held its collective breath as her fingers found the first clasp, then the second. The heavy veil began to slip, and at that exact moment, the great doors to the hall burst open with a crash that made everyone jump. A scout, wild-eyed and bloody, stumbled through. "Your Majesty," he gasped, falling to his knees. "The eastern border, it's under attack. The Shadow Walkers have returned. They're demanding." He paused, his eyes finding Seraphina with disturbing intensity. "They're demanding the scarred daughter of Ashenvale. They say she belongs to them. They say she's been there since the night her territory fell." Seraphina's blood turned to ice. Her hands froze on her veil, the clasps half undone. Damon's expression transformed from cold dismissal to lethal focus in an instant. "How many?" "Hundreds, sire. Maybe more. They're not attacking yet, just waiting. At the border. Their alpha sent this." The scout held up a black envelope sealed with wax, the color of dried blood. Damon took it, broke the seal, and read in silence. When he looked up, his frost-blue eyes found Seraphina with an intensity that made her wolf finally stir after years of silence. "It seems, tribute bride, that you're more valuable than anyone realized," he said softly, dangerously. "The Shadow Walker Alpha claims you're his lost mate, that you were promised to him before your territory fell, that the only reason he let you live 5 years ago was because he knew I would eventually bring you here. To him, that's not true," Seraphina whispered, horror clawing at her throat. "I don't know him. I've never—" "It doesn't matter what's true," Damon interrupted. He crumpled the letter in his fist. "What matters is that I now have a choice. Hand you over to prevent a war, or keep you and fight for a bride I never wanted in the first place." The silence that followed was absolute. Seraphina could feel everyone waiting, watching to see what the powerful Alpha King would do with the cursed bride who had brought nothing but chaos to his hall. "Captain Kieran," Damon called out, and a tall warrior with silver-shot hair stepped forward. "Take her to the North Tower. Lock it down. No one goes in or out without my direct order." "You're imprisoning me?" Seraphina asked, hating how her voice shook. Damon stepped close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his glacial eyes, could see the way his jaw was clenched with barely contained rage. "I'm protecting my asset," he corrected coldly, "until I decide what you're worth, whether you're worth fighting a war over, or whether you're simply a curse I should have refused from the start." As guards surrounded her, Seraphina felt her partially loosened veil slip further, revealing just a glimpse of her jaw, her neck and the silver scars that ran across her skin like lightning strikes, glowing faintly in the candlelight. Gasps echoed through the hall. But it was Priestess Mora's voice that carried over them all. "The moon's mark. by the goddess. She bears the moon's mark. The North Tower was beautiful in the way that prisons for nobility often were richly appointed with velvet curtains and carved furniture, but with windows too narrow to escape through and a door that locked from the outside. Seraphina stood in the center of the circular room, listening to the heavy bolt slide home, sealing her inside. Only then did she allow herself to collapse onto the plush carpet, her whole body shaking with the weight of everything that had just happened. The ceremony's destruction, the prophecy, the shadow walker's return, and worst of all, that glimpse of her scars enough to shock the assembly, but not enough to show them the full truth of what she carried. Her hands moved to her veil again, this time removing it completely in the privacy of her prison. The heavy fabric fell away, and she caught her reflection in the full-length mirror across the room. The scars covered the right side of her face, her neck, her shoulder, everywhere the darkness had touched her the night Ashen Veil burned. But they weren't the ugly, twisted marks that battle or fire would leave. They were silver, intricate as frost patterns on glass, and in certain lights, they seemed to glow with their own inner luminescence. Her mother had called them beautiful once, before the darkness took her too. The priests who'd examined her afterward had called them something else, the mark of the forsaken moon. Seraphina touched the largest scar, the one that ran from her temple to her jaw, following the path where the shadow creature's claw had opened her face. She'd been 13, hiding in the temple while her territory burned around her. She'd prayed to the moon goddess for salvation, for protection, for anything, and something had answered. She still didn't fully understand what had happened that night. One moment she'd been dying, bleeding out on the temple floor. The next, silver light had exploded from her wounds, driving back the shadows, creating a barrier that had kept her alive even as everything and everyone else fell. When the other territory's forces had finally arrived at dawn to find Ashen Veil destroyed, they'd found only her unconscious, scarred, and somehow untouched by the corruption that had consumed everyone else. Some called it a blessing, most called it evidence that she was cursed, that she'd somehow caused the destruction herself. A soft knock on the door startled her from her memories. Before she could respond, she heard the bolt slide back, and Lyra slipped inside carrying a tray of food and fresh water. "Miss Seraphina," the young Omega said, her eyes widening as she saw the unveiled face. But unlike the others, there was no horror in her expression, only wonder. "Your scars, they're beautiful. You're the first person to say that in 5 years," Seraphina said softly, making no move to cover herself. Lyra set down the tray and moved closer, her natural Omega empathy seeming to sense Seraphina's distress. "I shouldn't be here. Captain Kieran would have my hide if he knew I'd taken the guard's key, but I couldn't leave you alone, not after what happened in the hall." "Why are you being kind to me?" Seraphina asked. "Everyone else sees me as a curse." "Because I know what it's like to be judged for something beyond your control," Lyra said. Simply. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing burn scars of her own normal ones, painful looking. "I was in a house fire when I was young, killed my whole family. The pack wanted to cast me out for being marked by tragedy, but His Majesty took me in instead. Said strength wasn't just about power, it was about surviving what should have broken you." Seraphina absorbed this, seeing Damon Blackthorne in a new light. "He protected you. He protects those who can't protect themselves. When he chooses to." Lyra's expression turned troubled. "But Miss Seraphina, there are things happening in this palace, things you should know about." "What things?" Lyra glanced at the door nervously. "The Shadow Walker's return, it's not random. There are those in the king's own court who've been communicating with them, who want this war. And there are others who believe the old prophecies, who think you're actually the moon's chosen, and they're terrified of what that might mean. I'm not anyone's chosen, Serafina said bitterly. I'm just a survivor who got unlucky. Are you? Lyra challenged gently. The moon crystal shattered when you approached it. Your scars glow with silver light. You survived something that killed everyone else in your territory. She paused, and I've heard the servants talk. They say that ever since you arrived 3 days ago, His Majesty hasn't been sleeping, that he paces his chambers at night, that his wolf is restless in a way they've never seen before. Serafina's heart skipped. That doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? They say the goddess marks true mates, in ways we don't always understand. Ways that sometimes hurt before they heal. Before Serafina could respond to this unsettling suggestion, voices outside the door made them both freeze. Lyra's eyes went wide with panic. The window, alcove, Serafina whispered urgently. Hide there. Lyra scrambled behind the heavy curtains just as the door opened again. This time, it was Damon himself, who entered, still dressed in his ceremonial regalia from the interrupted binding. Captain Kieran stood behind him. Leave us, Damon commanded, and Kieran hesitated only a moment before obeying, closing the door behind him. For a long moment, Damon simply stared at her unveiled face. Serafina forced herself not to flinch under his scrutiny, not to cover the scars that had repulsed so many others. The eastern border sentries report that the Shadow Walker forces are growing, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. Their alpha, Malachar the Corrupted, has given me until tomorrow's moonrise to hand you over. If I refuse, he'll attack. So you've come to tell me my fate, Serafina said, lifting her chin. Will you trade me for peace, Alpha King? I should. His azure stare never left her face. You're nothing to me. A debt payment. A political inconvenience. Then why haven't you already done it? Damon crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping so close she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. This close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the tension in his powerful frame. Because my wolf won't let me, he admitted, and there was something almost like fury in his voice but directed at himself, not her. From the moment you arrived, hidden behind that veil, my wolf has been clawing at me, demanding I claim you, protect you, keep you, and I don't understand why. You're not powerful. You're not connected. You're not even whole, you're broken, scarred, possibly cursed. Each word was meant to wound, but Serafina had armor built from 5 years of such words. If you're trying to make me want to go with the Shadow Walkers, you're doing an excellent job. That's just it, Damon snarled. And suddenly his hand was on the wall beside her head, caging her in. I don't want you to go. Every instinct I have screams to keep you here, to fight anyone who tries to take you. And I hate it. I hate that I'm so weak that even knowing you might be a curse. Even knowing you bring chaos wherever you go, I still can't bring myself to hand you over. Serafina's breath caught. This close, she could smell him pine and night air, and something wild that called to the wolf sleeping inside her. Your Majesty, Priestess Mora says your scars are the moon's mark, he interrupted, that they prove you're the chosen one from the prophecy. Do you believe that? I don't know what I believe, Serafina admitted. I only know that something happened to me the night Ashenvale fell. Something that let me survive when I shouldn't have. And ever since then, I've felt incomplete. Like part of me is still sleeping, waiting for something. Waiting for what? I don't know. She finally let herself meet his eyes fully, let him see past the scars to the truth beneath. But when you touched me in the hall, when you grabbed my arm, my wolf stirred, just for a moment. For the first time in 5 years, I felt her close to waking. Damon's expression shifted, something dangerous and possessive flaring in those frost-blue depths. If you're truly the moon's chosen, if the prophecy is real, then you're not just valuable, you're priceless. Every territory, every alpha would want to control you, use you. Is that what you want? Serafina asked. To control me? I want to understand you, he said, and there was something raw in his voice that made her heart race. I want to know why my wolf recognizes you when we've never met. Why every part of me wants to claim you as mine when I should be repulsed by your scars and your curse. Maybe your wolf knows something you don't. Maybe. His hand lifted from the wall, and for one breathless moment, she thought he might touch her face, might trace the silver scars with his fingers. Instead, he stepped back, putting distance between them. Priestess Mora wants to perform a ritual. To test whether you're truly the moon's chosen, it requires a willing participant to share the trial with you. An alpha strong enough to anchor you if the goddess's power proves too much. And you're volunteering? Serafina asked, not quite keeping the surprise from her voice. I'm the only one strong enough to survive it if you truly are what the prophecy claims, Damon said. And if you're not, if this is all elaborate manipulation by the Shadow Walkers or some curse of yours, then I'll know, and I'll do what needs to be done. You mean you'll hand me over? I mean, I'll end the threat one way or another. His expression hardened. Tomorrow at moonrise, either you prove you're worth fighting a war over, or I give Malachar what he wants. Those are your options, tribute bride. He turned to leave, but Serafina's voice stopped him. Why do you keep calling me that? Tribute bride. As if my name is beneath you. Damon looked back over his shoulder, and for just a moment, his mask of cold indifference slipped. Because if I start thinking of you as Serafina, as a person rather than a problem, it will make what comes next that much harder. The door closed behind him, the bolt sliding home once more. In the silence that followed, Lyra emerged from her hiding place, her face pale. Miss Serafina, she whispered, did you hear how he spoke to you? The way his voice changed? He hates me, Serafina said numbly. He made that very clear. No, Lyra shook her head vigorously. He's terrified of you. There's a difference. And I think, she paused, seeming to gather courage. I think his wolf might already know what he's refusing to admit, which is that you're already his mate. And if the ritual tomorrow proves you're the moon's chosen, then the goddess herself has bound you to him. He won't just be unable to give you to the Shadow Walkers, he'll be compelled to protect you with his life. Serafina touched her scarred face, feeling the silver marks warm under her fingers. Somewhere deep inside, her wolf stirred again, responding to the truth in Lyra's words. Tomorrow at moonrise, everything would change. Either she would prove herself worthy of the moon's blessing, or she would be handed over to an alpha who claimed she'd been promised to him 5 years ago. An alpha whose name alone made her blood run cold, with a fear she didn't fully understand. Survive, her mother's voice whispered through her memory. Survive until the truth can be spoken. But what truth? And how much longer could she survive carrying secrets even she didn't fully understand? Outside her window, the moon began to rise, and her scars started to glow. Sleep refused to come. Serafina stood at her narrow window, watching the moon climb higher in the night sky, her scars pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Each pulse sent whispers through her mind, fragments of memories that weren't quite hers, voices speaking in languages she'd never learned but somehow understood. The veiled moon rises when the strong wolf falters. Two halves of one whole, separated by pride and fear. Stop, she whispered to the empty room, pressing her palms against the cool stone. I don't understand what you want from me. But the moon didn't answer. It never did. A sound at the door made her turn, not the bolt sliding, something softer. Scratching. like claws on wood. Then Lyra's urgent whisper, "Miss Seraphina, step back from the door." Seraphina obeyed, and moments later, the door swung open just wide enough for Lyra to slip through, this time accompanied by an older woman with steel-gray hair and shrewd amber eyes. The woman's power rolled off her in waves, not an omega like Lyra, but something else entirely. "This is Mira Nightshade," Lyra said quickly. "She was your mother's closest friend before Ashenvale fell. She's been searching for you for 5 years. Seraphina's breath caught. "You knew my mother?" "I loved her like a sister," Mira said, her voice rough with emotion. She moved forward, studying Seraphina's face with an intensity that made her want to hide. But Mira's expression held no horror at the scars, only grief and something that looked like relief. "Celine made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would find you, protect you, tell you the truth she never could." "What truth?" Seraphina's heart hammered against her ribs. Mira glanced at Lyra, who moved to stand guard by the door. Then the older woman pulled a small bundle from her cloak, old leather wrapped around something that gleamed silver in the moonlight. "Your mother was the previous moon's chosen," Mira said quietly. "She carried the goddess's blessing until the night Ashenvale fell. The Shadow Walkers didn't attack randomly. They came specifically for her, to steal her power, to corrupt the moon's blessing into something dark." Seraphina felt the room tilt. "That's not possible. Mother was she was a healer, a teacher. She was the bridge between mortal and divine," Mira interrupted. "And she was dying, had been dying for years from a curse placed on her by Malachar when she refused his claim on her. The night of the attack, she knew she wouldn't survive. So she did the only thing she could. She transferred her blessing to you." The silver scars on Seraphina's skin flared hot. "The light that saved me was your mother's final gift. Her power, her blessing, her very essence poured into you to keep you alive, to keep the moon's chosen line unbroken." Mira unwrapped the leather bundle, revealing an ancient silver amulet shaped like a crescent moon. "She told me to give you this when the time came. She said you would know when you needed it." Seraphina took the amulet with trembling hands. The moment her fingers touched the metal, a flood of memories that weren't hers crashed through her mind. Her mother, younger, standing before a massive gathering of alphas, silver light pouring from her hands as she healed a plague that had devastated 3 territories. Her mother, arguing with a dark figure shrouded in shadows. Malachar. "I will never be yours. The goddess chose me for a greater purpose than being your breeding stock." Her mother, holding infant Seraphina, tears streaming down her face. "Forgive me, little moon. I'm giving you a burden you never asked for, but you're stronger than I ever was. You'll survive what I couldn't." Her mother, dying on the temple floor, pressing her hands to 13-year-old Seraphina's bleeding face. "Take it all, my darling. Take my light, my power, my love. Let it sleep inside you until you're strong enough to carry it. And when you wake, you'll understand you were always meant for the strongest wolf, the one whose pride matches your own. He'll resist you, mock you, try to push you away. But his wolf will know. His wolf will always know." Seraphina gasped, the visions releasing her so abruptly. She would have fallen if Mira hadn't caught her. "She knew," Seraphina whispered. "She knew about Demon, about all of this. The moon's chosen are always bound to the Alpha King of their time," Mira explained. "It's how the balance is maintained, divine feminine power paired with mortal masculine strength. But the binding can't be forced. It must be chosen by both parties, or the power will destroy them both." "Damon doesn't want me," Seraphina said bitterly. "He made that very clear." "His wolf wants you," Mira corrected. "The man is afraid of you, of what you represent, of losing control." but his wolf recognizes you, just as your wolf recognizes him. Tomorrow's ritual will prove it. What exactly is this ritual? Serafina asked, clutching the amulet. Damon said it requires an anchor. It requires your mate, Mira said bluntly. The ritual will awaken your sleeping wolf, will bring forth the full power of the moon's chosen. But that much divine energy needs to be grounded in mortal flesh, or it will tear you apart. Only your true mate can anchor you. If Damon isn't your mate, if his wolf doesn't truly recognize yours, then you'll both die. The room fell silent, except for the pounding of Serafina's heart. And if we survive, what then? Then the goddess's blessing becomes active. You'll be able to do what your mother did. Heal corruption, drive back shadow, strengthen the territories against darkness. But more than that, you'll be bound to Damon as his queen, his mate, his equal. No contract, no political arrangement, a bond forged by the goddess herself that can never be broken. He'll hate that, Serafina said. Being forced into a mate bond he never wanted. Perhaps, Mira agreed. Or perhaps he'll finally stop fighting what his wolf has known since the moment you arrived, that you were always meant to be his. A commotion outside made all three women freeze. Shouting, running feet, the clash of metal on metal. Lyra rushed to the window while Mira moved protectively in front of Serafina. What's happening? Serafina demanded. Fighting in the courtyard, Lyra reported, her face pale. It looks like, oh goddess, it's Valdis Stormbringer and her father's warriors. They're trying to break into the North Tower. Why would they? Serafina's question died as understanding crashed through her. They want to take me. To hand me over to the Shadow Walkers themselves. Valdis has been in communication with Malachar for months, Mira said grimly. I've been tracking her movements, but I didn't realize she'd make her move so soon. She thinks if she delivers you herself, Malachar will reward her with power, maybe even make her his queen instead. She's insane, Lyra breathed. Malachar would just kill her once he has what he wants. Ambition makes fools of even the strongest wolves, Mira said. She pressed a small dagger into Serafina's hand. If they breach this room, you run. There's a servant's passage behind that tapestry. It leads to the old chapel. The door exploded inward with a crash that shook the entire tower. Valdis stood in the doorway, flanked by 6 heavily armed warriors, her perfect face twisted with something ugly and desperate. Hello, little scarred bride, Valdis purred, but her eyes were wild. I'm afraid your imprisonment has been cut short. You're coming with me. King Damon will kill you for this, Serafina said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice, even as terror clawed at her throat. King Damon is currently dealing with a convenient attack on the western gates, Valdis said, moving into the room like a predator stalking prey. By the time he realizes what's happened, you and I will be long gone. Malachar is waiting at the border. He's promised me everything. Power, status, a place at his side. All I have to do is deliver his wayward mate. I'm not his mate, Serafina spat. I've never even met him. You don't remember, Valdis corrected, but he remembers you. Says he marked you as his when you were just a child, before your mother stole you away and hid you in that pathetic territory. Says the scars you carry are actually his claim marks, corrupted by your mother's interference. Serafina's hand flew to her face, to the silver scars that suddenly felt like brands. That's not true. Does it matter? Valdis laughed, the sound brittle and slightly unhinged. True or not, he wants you, and I want what he's offering in exchange. So stop wasting everyone's time and come quietly, or I'll drag you out by that freakish scarred face of yours. Mira stepped forward, power crackling around her. You'll have to go through me first, pup. Gladly, Valdis snarled and lunged. What happened next moved too fast for Serafina to fully process. Mira met Valdis's attack with surprising strength, the two she-wolves crashing together in an explosion of snarls and snapping teeth. Lyra grabbed Serafina's arm, trying to pull her toward the tapestry and the escape route beyond, but Valdis's warriors were faster. Two of them caught Lyra, throwing the young Omega against the wall with brutal force. She crumpled, unconscious or worse. The other four converged on Serafina. No! Serafina heard herself scream, and something inside her, something that had been sleeping for 5 years, suddenly woke. Silver light exploded from her scars, so bright that the warriors staggered back with shouts of pain. The amulet around her neck burned hot against her skin, and her mother's voice echoed through her mind. When you wake, little moon, you'll be unstoppable, but only if you accept what you are. Power surged through Serafina's veins like liquid moonlight. For the first time since that terrible night, she felt her wolf rise, not weak or broken, but magnificent and fierce. The sleeping giant inside her stretched, yawned, and opened eyes that glowed with divine silver. I am not prey, Serafina said, and her voice carried harmonics that weren't quite human. I am not a prize to be traded, or a curse to be feared. I am the moon's chosen, daughter of Selene Ashenvale, and you will not take me. The silver light intensified, spreading from her scars to fill the entire room. Valdis's warriors screamed, falling to their knees as the divine energy burned away at something dark that clung to them, shadow corruption. Serafina realized. They'd been touched by Malakar's power, turned into his puppets. Valdis herself broke away from Mira, her perfect face contorted with rage and fear. What are you? She demanded. I'm exactly what Malakar fears most, Serafina answered, and took a step forward. The silver light moved with her, inexorable as the tide. I'm the one thing he can never corrupt or control. I'm his doom, just as I was always meant to be. But maintaining the power was agony. Serafina could feel it burning through her mortal body. Too much divine energy for flesh and bone to contain. Her mother's voice whispered again. You need your anchor, little moon. You need him. As if summoned by her desperation, a howl split the night, deep and powerful and furious. The sound of it made Serafina's wolf sing in recognition, made her power surge even higher. Damon. Her wolf knew him, called to him, needed him with an intensity that transcended logic or pride. The tower's outer wall exploded inward in a shower of stone and mortar. Through the dust and debris, a massive black wolf emerged, larger than any Serafina had ever seen, with winter blue eyes that found her immediately. Behind him, the broken body of one of Valdis's lookouts suggested he'd come through anyone who'd tried to stop him. The wolf shifted mid-stride, bones and muscle restructuring until Damon stood before her in human form, power radiating from every line of his body. His clothes were torn, blood spattered across his skin, but his focus never wavered from Serafina's glowing form. Release the power, he commanded. You're burning yourself apart. I can't, Serafina gasped. Now that it was awake, the divine energy didn't want to return to sleep. It wanted out, wanted to burn through everything, wanted to complete what her mother had started. I don't know how to control it. Then let me help you, Damon said, and closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, calloused palms gentle against her burning scars. The moment he touched her, something clicked into place, a circuit completing, power finding ground. The silver light didn't disappear, but it stopped threatening to tear her apart, instead flowing between them in a pattern that felt ancient and right. There you are, Damon murmured, and there was something in his voice that Serafina had never heard before. wonder, possessiveness, recognition. I felt you wake, felt your wolf calling mine. Every instinct I have is screaming to claim you right here, right now, regardless of who's watching. Then why don't you? The words left Serafina's mouth before she could stop them, bold and challenging despite the chaos surrounding them. Damon's eyes flashed. Because, when I claim you, tribute bride, it won't be in front of traitors and corrupted fools. It will be under the full moon, with the goddess herself as witness. After you've proven to every wolf in this kingdom that you're worthy of standing at my side. I thought you didn't want me, Serafina whispered. I don't want you, Damon corrected, and there was raw honesty in his voice. But my wolf chose you the moment you arrived, and I'm done fighting what I can't change. Tomorrow at moonrise we do the ritual. And if we survive it, if you truly are my fated mate, then the moon help anyone who tries to take you from me. Before Serafina could respond, Valdis's voice cut through their moment. How touching, but Malachar won't give up just because you've decided to play the devoted mate, Damon. He'll come for her with everything he has. You're starting a war over a scarred, cursed bride who might destroy you both. Damon turned his glacial gaze on Valdis, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then let him come. I'll enjoy crushing him. He raised his hand, and Captain Kieran appeared in the broken doorway with a squad of guards. Take Valdis and her warriors to the dungeons. Charges, treason, conspiracy with enemy forces, attempted kidnapping. They can rot there until I decide what to do with them. As the guards dragged a screaming Valdis away, Damon turned back to Serafina. The silver light still connected them, pulsing gently now instead of burning. Can you pull the power back? He asked quietly. Serafina tried, feeling for the edges of the divine energy. With Damon's touch anchoring her, it was easier. The light slowly dimmed, retreating back into her scars, into the sleeping wolf who now felt closer than ever before. When it was done, she swayed with exhaustion. Damon caught her easily, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. The ritual is in 12 hours, he said. Until then, you're staying where I can protect you. No more towers, no more locked doors. You'll stay in my chambers, under my guard, where anyone who wants to take you will have to go through me first. Your chambers? Serafina's exhausted mind struggled to process this. My chambers, Damon confirmed, already carrying her toward the door. And if you're about to argue about propriety or reputation, save your breath. The moment that silver light connected us, every wolf in this palace felt it. They know what you are, what we are to each other. There's no hiding it now. As they passed through the broken doorway, Serafina caught sight of Lyra being tended by healers, conscious again, and already trying to sit up. Mira stood nearby, her expression satisfied despite the blood on her clothes. Tomorrow, little moon, Mira called after them. Tomorrow, you become what you were always meant to be. Tomorrow, just 12 more hours, until the ritual that would either prove her worthy or destroy them both. 12 hours until she had to face the truth about what she was, what she'd always been. Serafina rested her head against Damon's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, feeling the rightness of being in his arms even as her mind screamed that everything was happening too fast. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Good, Damon said. So am I. But we'll face it together. And despite everything, the danger, the prophecy, the war looming on the horizon, Serafina felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. Damon's private chambers were nothing like Serafina had imagined. She'd expected cold stone and military efficiency, but instead found rich fabrics in deep blues and silvers, shelves lined with books, and a massive window that overlooked the moonlit mountains. A space that spoke of a man, not just a king. He set her down carefully on a plush chair by the fireplace, then moved to bolt the door from the inside. The sound of it made something flutter in Serafina's stomach, awareness that she was truly alone, with him, in his most private space. "You should rest," Damon said, not looking at her, as he moved to pour water from a pitcher. "The ritual tomorrow will take everything you have. Will you tell me about it? What to expect?" He finally turned, holding out a cup of water. When she took it, their fingers brushed, and that electric connection sparked between them again. Damon's jaw tightened, and he stepped back quickly, as if proximity to her was dangerous. "Priestess Mora will call down the full moon's light," he began, his voice carefully controlled. "It will enter you, awaken every dormant piece of your mother's blessing. The power will try to consume you, to burn through your mortal body like a forest fire. That's where I come in, as my anchor," Serafina said. "As your mate," Damon corrected, and the word hung between them, heavy with implication. "If the bond is real, if the goddess truly paired us, then my strength will ground your power. We'll be able to share it, balance it between us. But if we're wrong, if you're meant for someone else, then the power will tear us both apart," Serafina finished. She set down the cup with trembling hands. "Why are you willing to risk it? You could just hand me over to Malachar. Avoid the ritual, avoid the war, avoid all of this." Damon laughed, but it was a dark, frustrated sound. "Don't think I haven't considered it. Every logical part of me says that's exactly what I should do. You've been here 3 days, and already there's been assassination attempts, prophecies, shattered moon crystals, and traitors in my own court." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "You're chaos incarnate, Serafina. Everything I've spent years building, order, control, stability, you threaten all of it just by existing." The words should have hurt, but Serafina heard what lay beneath them. Fear. Not of her, but of what she made him feel. "Then why?" she pressed. "Why not just let me go?" Damon crossed to her in 2 strides, pulling her to her feet, with the same intensity he'd shown in the tower. This close, with the firelight playing across his features, Serafina could see the exhaustion in his face, the war being waged behind those azure eyes. "Because when Valdis's warriors attacked the western gates, when I heard the explosion from the north tower and realized someone was coming for you, I lost my mind," he admitted, his voice raw. "I shifted mid-run, tore through anyone in my path, and the only thought in my head was mine. Not the tribute bride, not the political asset, mine, my mate, my wolf claiming what belongs to him." His hands tightened on her arms. "And when I saw you glowing with that silver light, power pouring off you like moonlight made solid, do you know what I felt?" "Fear?" Serafina whispered. "Pride," Damon corrected fiercely. "Fierce, possessive pride that my mate was strong enough to defend herself, powerful enough to face down traitors and corruption without me there to protect her." He leaned down until their foreheads nearly touched. "You terrify me, Serafina. Not because you're weak or cursed, but because you're strong enough to match me. Strong enough that I'll never be able to control you, dominate you, keep you safely tucked away where the world can't touch you." "I don't want to be controlled," Serafina breathed. "I know, and that's why you're perfect." His thumb traced the largest scar on her face, the touch gentle, despite his obvious struggle for control. "These scars I spent 3 days telling myself they made you unworthy, that I could never desire someone so damaged. But the truth is, they're beautiful. They're proof you survived what should have killed you. They're evidence of your strength, your resilience. And every time I look at them, My wolf wants to kiss every single one, to claim the female strong enough to carry such marks and still stand tall. Serafina's breath hitched. No one had ever spoken about her scars like that, not as flaws to be pitied or horrors to be hidden, but as badges of honor. Damon, she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say, just knowing his name needed to be spoken. Tomorrow, he said firmly, pulling back even though it clearly cost him. Tomorrow, after the ritual, after we know for certain what we are to each other, then I can touch you the way I want to. Then I can claim you properly, the way a mate should be claimed. But tonight, we wait. Because you need to be sure, Serafina said, trying to hide her disappointment. Because you need to be sure, Damon corrected. Once we're bound, Serafina, there's no breaking it. You'll be tied to me for life, to my kingdom, my responsibilities, my enemies. You'll be queen of the most powerful territory in the realm, with all the danger and duty that entails. His expression softened slightly. I need you to choose this with full knowledge of what it means. Not because a prophecy says it should be so, and not because circumstances forced us together, but because you want it. The vulnerability in his voice shook something loose in Serafina's chest. This wasn't the cold, mocking alpha king from the Great Hall. This was just Damon, a male, struggling with feelings he didn't understand, trying to do right by a female he'd been taught to see as beneath him. What if I already know? She asked quietly. What if my wolf already chose you, the moment you caught me when that power exploded? What if every part of me is screaming that you're mine, just as surely as I'm yours? Damon's eyes blazed. Then tomorrow can't come fast enough, he growled. But we still wait. I won't have you bound to me because of heat of the moment passion, only to wake up and regret it when you realize what you've tied yourself to. Before Serafina could argue further, a sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Damon's entire demeanor shifted instantly, the vulnerable male disappearing behind the Alpha King's mask. Enter, he commanded. Captain Kieran stepped in, his expression grim. Your Majesty, Priestess Mora requests an urgent audience. She says there's something about tomorrow's ritual you need to know. Something the old texts just revealed. Can it wait until morning? Damon asked. She says no, sire, she says. Kieran hesitated, glancing at Serafina. She says the ritual is more dangerous than she initially thought, that there's a reason it hasn't been performed in 3 generations. The last moon's chosen who attempted it, both she and her alpha mate died screaming. The room fell silent. Serafina felt ice spread through her veins. Both of them? She whispered. The ritual killed both? According to Priestess Mora, yes, Kieran confirmed. The power was too much. They couldn't balance it. And she says, he paused again, clearly uncomfortable. Spit it out, Damon commanded. She says that was with an Alpha King who willingly wanted the bond, who'd chosen his mate freely. She fears that because your Majesty was forced into this arrangement, because there's resistance and resentment in your heart, the power might exploit that, might tear you apart from the inside out. Damon's face remained impassive, but Serafina felt him tense. Bring Priestess Mora here. Now. As Kieran hurried out, Serafina found her voice. If there's doubt in your heart about this bond, about me, you can't do the ritual. It will kill you. And if I don't do it? Demon countered. Malakar attacks at moonrise if we haven't completed the binding. Without your power fully awakened, we'll lose. The Shadow Walkers will overrun Silvercrest, kill everyone here, and take you anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. A chance to die together, Serafina said bitterly. Better than living without ever knowing what we could have been. The door opened again, and Priestess Mora entered, leaning heavily on her staff. The ancient she-wolf looked even older in the firelight, her milky eyes troubled. "I'm sorry to bring dark news," she began without preamble, "but you both deserve the truth. The moon's choosing ritual is not simply a test of compatibility. It's a crucible. Every doubt, every resentment, every fear and negative emotion between potential mates becomes a weapon that the divine power uses against them." "Why?" Seraphina demanded. "Why would the moon goddess create something designed to kill her chosen?" "Because divine power cannot be bound to mortal vessels that harbor darkness," Mora explained. "The ritual is meant to burn away all that stands between true mates, to force absolute honesty, absolute acceptance, or absolute destruction. Your mother and her mate succeeded because they came to the ritual with open hearts, having already chosen each other freely. You too." She looked between them. "You carry 3 days of resentment, mockery, fear, and forced circumstance that will all be brought to the surface tomorrow. You'll have to face every ugly truth, every harsh word, every moment of rejection, and forgive it all, accept it all, in the space of a single ritual. Most cannot." "Then what do you suggest?" Damon asked, his voice tight. "We have less than 12 hours. Mora's expression softened. "You talk, truly talk. Share your fears, your truths, the things you've hidden behind pride and power. Enter that ritual tomorrow having already torn down the walls between you, or those walls will be torn down forcefully, and they might take your lives with them." The priestess bowed and left, leaving them alone once more in the charged silence. Seraphina looked at Damon, this powerful alpha, who'd shown her more glimpses of vulnerability in one night than most saw in a lifetime. "So," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "where do we start?" Damon moved to the window, staring out at the moon that would tomorrow demand their truth or their lives. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "We start with the fact that I've been lying to myself since the moment you arrived. I told myself I was repulsed by your scars, but the truth is, the moment I saw even a glimpse of them in the Great Hall, my wolf recognized the moon's mark. He knew what you were before I was willing to accept it." He turned to face her. "I mocked you, pushed you away, called you tribute bride instead of your name, all because I was terrified. Terrified that if I let myself feel what my wolf felt, I'd lose control. I've spent my entire life maintaining absolute dominance, never showing weakness, never letting anyone close enough to hurt me. And you, Seraphina Ashenvale, you threatened all of that just by existing." The raw honesty in his words made Seraphina's throat tight. "I was terrified too," she admitted. "When I arrived and heard how everyone spoke of you, the cruel alpha king who mocked anything weak, I told myself I'd never let you see how much your words hurt. Every dismissal, every moment you paraded other females in front of me, I pretended not to care, but I did. Gods, I did." "Why?" Damon asked, moving closer. "Why did you care what I thought? You barely knew me." "Because my wolf knew you," Seraphina said simply. "From that first moment in the Great Hall, when you looked at me and I felt something crack open inside, she knew. Even when my mind was listing all the reasons to hate you, my wolf was crying out that we'd finally found our other half." Damon closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted his powerful build. "I need you to understand something. Tomorrow, when that ritual begins, you're going to see inside me. You'll see every dark thought, every moment I've failed, every ugly part of me I keep hidden, and I'm going to see the same in you. We won't be able to hide anymore." "I know," Seraphina whispered. "And if you survive seeing all of that, all the broken, imperfect, sometimes cruel reality of who I am, Will you still want this bond? Will you still want me? Serafina reached up, covering his hands with hers. Will you? When you see what I carry, the memories of that night, the full weight of what the blessing demands. When you see that I'm not just scarred on the outside, but damaged inside in ways that might never fully heal, then we'll be damaged together, Damon said fiercely. And maybe that's what the goddess intended all along, two broken wolves, making each other whole. He leaned down, and for one breathless moment, Serafina thought he would kiss her. But instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, right over the largest of her scars, in a gesture so tender it made her eyes burn with unshed tears. Get some rest, he said softly. Tomorrow, we face the moon together. Tonight, we face ourselves. He moved away, settling into a chair by the door, positioning himself between her and any threat that might come. A guardian, a protector, and maybe, just maybe, her mate. Serafina curled up on the plush sofa, exhaustion finally claiming her. But as she drifted toward sleep, she felt it the brush of Damon's consciousness against hers, his wolf reaching out to hers in the space between waking and dreaming. We've got this, his wolf seemed to say. My moon, my mate, my equal. Tomorrow, we prove it to everyone. And for the first time in 5 years, Serafina's wolf answered back with something other than silence. Tomorrow, we become what we were always meant to be. Outside, the moon climbed higher, marking the hours until moonrise, until the ritual that would either bind them eternally or destroy them completely. 12 hours. The countdown had begun. Dawn came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Serafina woke to find Damon already awake, standing at the window watching the sun rise. He'd clearly been there for hours, his posture rigid with tension. Did you sleep at all? She asked softly. No, he didn't turn around. I kept thinking about what Mora said, about the ritual exposing every truth between us. There are things in my past, Serafina, things I've done as king that haunt me, decisions I made that cost lives, cruelties I inflicted because I thought strength meant showing no mercy. Serafina rose and moved to stand beside him. And you're afraid I'll see those things and reject you. Aren't you afraid of the same? He finally looked at her, and in the morning light, she could see the shadows under his eyes. You carry memories of watching everyone you love die. That kind of trauma, when I see it, when I feel it as if it's my own, what if I can't bear the weight of it? Then we'll fall together, Serafina said, echoing his words from the night before. But I don't think we will. I think we're both stronger than we believe. A knock interrupted them. Lyra entered with a tray of food, her head bandaged but her smile warm. Priestess Mora says the preparations are complete. The ritual ground is ready. She suggests you both eat something, though she admits most couples can't stomach food before this. Most couples who attempt this are in love, Damon said bluntly. We're just two wolves trying not to die. Are you, though? Lyra asked, setting down the tray with more force than necessary. Just two wolves? Because from where I'm standing, you've both been circling each other like matched predators since the moment Miss Serafina arrived. You can call it many things, Your Majesty, but just wolves isn't one of them. She left before Damon could respond. And Serafina found herself fighting a smile, despite the fear churning in her stomach. She's brave, Damon observed. Speaking to her king like that? She's right, Serafina corrected. And you know it. The hours crawled by as they prepared. Mira arrived to help Serafina into the ceremonial robe, white silk, that left her scarred arms and shoulders exposed. For the first time in 5 years, she would stand before witnesses without her veil, without anything to hide behind. Your mother wore this same robe, Mira said softly, fastening the clasps. She was terrified too, but she told me that the moment the ritual began, all the fear fell away, because she finally understood that she wasn't facing it alone. Did she love him? Serafina asked. Her alpha mate? Or was it just the bond? She loved him more than life itself, Mira answered. But the love came after the bond, not before. The goddess doesn't demand love to create mates, Serafina. She demands the potential for it, the willingness to try. The rest develops with time. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Serafina was led to the ritual ground, a circular clearing in the palace's sacred grove, surrounded by ancient stones that hummed with old magic. The entire court had gathered to witness, though they stood far back, outside the protective circle Priestess Mora had drawn. Damon was already there, wearing simple black pants and nothing else, his muscled torso on display. The ceremonial marks had been painted on his skin in silver ink, ancient symbols of strength and protection. When he saw Serafina, something in his expression shifted, softened. "You're beautiful," he said, so quietly only she could hear. "I should have told you that the first moment I saw you. Instead, I hid behind cruelty because I was afraid of what it meant, that I thought so." Serafina's breath caught. "Demon, I know this isn't the time," he interrupted. "But if something goes wrong, if this ritual tears us apart, I need you to know. These 3 days with you have woken something in me I thought was dead. Hope, maybe. Or the possibility of happiness. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful the goddess chose you for me, even if I was too much of a fool to see it." Before she could respond, Priestess Mora's voice rang out, commanding attention. "We gather under the watchful eye of the moon to witness the ancient rite of choosing. 2 souls stand before us, Serafina Ashenvale, bearer of www, the moon's blessing, and Damon Blackthorn, Alpha King of Silvercrest. The goddess will judge, if they are worthy to be bound, if their wolves recognize each other as true mates." Mora raised her staff, and the silver paint on Damon's body began to glow. Serafina's scars answered with their own light, and she felt power gathering in the air like the pressure before a storm. "The ritual will show you each other's truths," Mora continued. "Every memory, every fear, every shame and secret, you cannot hide from each other or from the goddess. If you choose to proceed, step into the circle together." Serafina looked at Damon. His glacial eyes held hers, steady despite the fear she knew he felt. He held out his hand. "Together," he said simply. She took his hand, and they stepped forward as one. The moment they crossed into the circle, the world disappeared. There was no court, no witnesses, no palace, only silver light so bright it should have been blinding, but instead felt like coming home. The power of the full moon, despite it not yet having risen, poured down through some channel that existed outside normal time and space, and then the visions began. Serafina gasped as Damon's memories flooded through her. A young boy, no more than 7, watching his father execute a prisoner. "A king shows no mercy," his father said. "Remember that, Damon. Mercy is weakness." A teenage Damon, forced to kill his own wolf companion when it became sick, his father insisting he do it himself to build character. The way Damon had cried afterward. Alone in his room, certain he was broken inside. A young king, barely 20, making the decision to let a rebel territory starve rather than send aid. They chose rebellion, his advisors said. Let them face the consequences, the guilt that ate at him when he learned children had died. Damon staring at himself in the mirror, practicing his cold expression, his cruel smile, building the armor of the heartless Alpha King because that's what everyone expected, what everyone needed him to be. She felt his shame, his self-loathing, the weight of every harsh decision and unkind word. And beneath it all, a desperate loneliness, the certainty that no one could love the monster he'd made himself become. "I see you," Serafina heard herself say, though the words seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her conscious mind. "I see what you've done, what you've had to become. And I see the boy who cried for his wolf, the male who carries the weight of every life lost. You're not a monster, Damon. You're just alone. But you don't have to be anymore." Then it was her turn. She felt Damon's consciousness merge with hers as her memories opened to him. A 13-year-old girl, watching shadow creatures tear through her home. Her mother pushing her toward the temple, screaming, "Run, Serafina, run!" Hiding behind the altar, hearing the screams go silent one by one. The crushing certainty that she was the only one left, that everyone she loved was dead. The shadow creature finding her, its claw opening her face. The pain, the terror, the moment she accepted she was about to die. Her mother appearing, already dying herself, pressing bloody hands to Serafina's wounds. "I'm sorry, my darling. I'm so sorry for what I'm about to give you." The silver light burning through her as her mother's blessing transferred, the agony of divine power forcing itself into a mortal child's body. Waking up in a strange place, surrounded by healers who flinched from her scars. The whispers, cursed, tainted. She should have died with the rest. 5 years of isolation, of learning to hide behind veils and silence. The certainty that she would never be loved, never be wanted, that the scars made her worthless. She felt Damon's rage on her behalf, his fury at every person who'd made her feel less than. But more than that, she felt his understanding, the recognition of a kindred spirit, someone else who'd learned to hide their wounds behind masks. "I see you too." Damon's voice resonated through the light. "I see the girl who survived the unsurvivable, who carried divine power alone for 5 years rather than let it corrupt and destroy. You're not cursed, Serafina. You're chosen. And every scar you bear is proof that you're strong enough to be my queen, my mate, my equal." The silver light intensified, and suddenly they were deeper still, in a place where thoughts became unnecessary. Their wolves rose to meet each other, Damon's massive black beast, and Serafina's ethereal silver one, circling, assessing, recognizing. The wolves knew what their human counterparts had been too afraid to admit. They were made for each other, 2 halves of one whole, the strength and the blessing, the alpha and the chosen. The king and his queen, "Mine," Damon's wolf growled, possessive and fierce. "Ours," Serafina's wolf corrected, equally fierce. "We are equals, or we are nothing." "Equals," Damon's wolf agreed. And then they were pressing together, merging, the bond snapping into place with a force that shook the earth itself. Serafina heard herself scream, not in pain, but in overwhelming sensation. Power flooded through her, through both of them, divine energy, finding the perfect channel in their joined souls. Her mother's blessing fully awakened, but instead of consuming her, it flowed between them in an endless circuit. Damon's strength grounded it, and her power amplified his. Together, they became something neither could be alone. The bond settled into place, unbreakable and eternal. And with it came the crushing weight of what they now shared, every emotion, every sensation, every thought laid bare. There would be no lies between them, no secrets. What one felt, the other would know. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like relief. The silver light began to fade, and reality returned in pieces. The ritual circle, the sacred grove, the assembled witnesses who stood in stunned silence. Serafina opened her eyes to find herself still standing, Damon's arms around her, holding her steady. His frost blue eyes glowed with silver now, traces of her power evident in his gaze. And when she looked down, she saw that some of his strength had transferred to her. Her muscles were more defined, her stance more grounded. It worked, she breathed. We survived. We did more than survive, Damon said, and there was wonder in his voice. Serafina, I can feel you. Everything you're feeling right now, the relief, the joy, the lingering fear. It's like you're a part of me now. Because I am, she said, understanding flooding through her. The bond it made us one. Your strength is mine. My power is yours. We're complete, Damon finished. He cupped her face, his touch reverent now rather than hesitant. For the first time in my life, I feel complete. Priestess Mora stepped forward, tears streaming down her weathered face. The goddess has spoken. The moon's chosen has found her alpha mate. Long live the king and his queen. The cry was taken up by the crowd. Long live the king. Long live the queen. But before Serafina could fully process what had happened, a horn sounded from the palace walls. 3 long blasts that meant only one thing. Enemy at the gates. Captain Kieran rushed forward, his face grim. Your Majesty, the Shadow Walkers have arrived. Malachar himself leads them. He's demanding we hand over the moon's chosen, or he'll raise Silvercrest to the ground. Damon's expression hardened, the tender mate disappearing behind the Alpha King. How many? Thousands, sire. And they've brought corruption with them. The very ground they stand on is turning black. Serafina felt fury rise inside her, not just her own, but Damon's too, their emotions amplifying each other through the bond. The power that had been so hard to control before now responded easily, flowing through her at the slightest thought. Then let's introduce Malachar to his mistake, Damon said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. He came expecting a frightened girl to cower behind her mate. Instead, he'll face the moon's chosen queen, standing beside her alpha king. He turned to Serafina, and in his eyes, she saw not just acceptance, but pride. Ready to show them what we can do together, my queen? Serafina smiled, feeling her scars glow silver, feeling the power of the full moon which had just risen over the horizon flooding through her veins. Through their bond, she felt Damon's strength reinforcing her own, his absolute certainty that together, they were unstoppable. Let's end this, she said. And hand in hand, the Alpha King and his moon's chosen queen walked toward the gates, toward the battle that would prove once and for all that they were exactly what the goddess intended, a force too powerful for darkness to ever overcome. The gates of Silvercrest stood open not in surrender, but in challenge. Damon had ordered them so, a statement that he would not hide behind walls from the threat that waited beyond. As he and Serafina approached, the bond between them hummed with shared determination, each drawing strength from the other's presence. The sight that greeted them made even seasoned warriors step back in fear. The Shadow Walker army spread across the valley, like a plague, thousands of corrupted wolves with eyes that glowed sickly yellow. And everywhere they stood, the earth beneath them turned black and withered, life itself fleeing from their touch. At the front of this army stood Malachar. He was massive, even by Alpha standards, his body twisted by the corruption he wielded. Black veins spiderwebbed across his skin, and shadows moved around him like living things. But his eyes, those remained sharp and calculating, fixed on Serafina with an obsession that made her skin crawl. There she is. Malachar's voice carried across the distance, amplified by dark magic. My wayward bride, Selene's daughter, the power that was promised to me. I was never promised to you, Serafina called back, her voice steady, despite the fear trying to claw its way up her throat. Through the bond, she felt Damon's fury at Malakar's claim, felt his absolute certainty that she belonged to no one but herself, and by choice, to him. Your mother promised herself to me first, Malakar countered, before she betrayed me, before she ran to hide in that pathetic territory. The moon's blessing should have been mine to control, to shape, to use, but she chose weakness instead. Chose a mortal mate over true power. She chose love over corruption. Serafina shot back, and she chose right. Malakar laughed, the sound like bones breaking. Love, that sentimental poison. Look where it got her dead, along with everyone fool enough to follow her. But you, Serafina, you can still choose differently. Come to me, willingly. Bring me that blessing your mother stole from me, and I'll let this kingdom survive. Refuse, and I'll make sure you watch every single wolf here die before I take you anyway. Damon stepped forward, power radiating from him in waves. You'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, Malakar, I'm not as easy to kill as you might think. The Alpha King. Malakar's eyes narrowed. I wondered if you'd be stupid enough to try the ritual. Most who attempt it die screaming, but I suppose desperation makes fools of even the strongest wolves. He gestured, and his army tensed, ready to charge. It doesn't matter. Even bonded, you're no match for what I've become. The corruption isn't weakness, it's evolution. Power without the restraint of morality. Strength without the burden of conscience. No, Serafina said, and silver light began to emanate from her scars, growing brighter with each word. It's just emptiness wearing power's clothes, and it ends tonight. She felt Damon's hand find hers, felt their bond flare brilliant as the full moon. Overhead, the power that had been sleeping in her for 5 years rose up. But this time, instead of threatening to consume her, it flowed through the channel Damon provided his strength, giving her power, form, and focus. Together, Damon said quietly, only for her. Together, Serafina agreed. They raised their joined hands, and the silver light exploded outward in a wave that lit up the valley like daylight. Where it touched the corrupted ground, life returned, grass sprouting, flowers blooming, the blackness receding as if it had never been. Malakar's eyes widened. Impossible. That blessing should be sleeping, dormant Until you what? Serafina demanded, understanding, suddenly clicking into place. Until you could corrupt me the way you tried to corrupt my mother? That's what you tried to do 5 years ago, wasn't it? The attack on Ashenvale wasn't about conquest. It was about breaking me, about making me desperate enough that I'd accept your help, your power. Your mother was already dying from resisting my mark. Malakar snarled, his composure cracking. All those years she suffered, wasting away because her foolish mortal mate couldn't handle being bound to true power. I was going to free her, to give her what she truly needed. But she chose death over me, just like she chose to pour her blessing into you, a child, rather than let me claim it. She chose to save me, Serafina corrected, feeling tears on her face but refusing to let them weaken her voice. She chose to give me a chance at life, even knowing what burden it carried. And she chose right, because look at what I found. Not corruption and emptiness, but an equal, a true mate. Everything you'll never have because you chose power over connection. Malakar's face twisted with rage. Enough speeches. I came for what's mine, and I'll take it from your corpse if necessary. He raised his hand, and the Shadow Walker army surged forward with a roar that shook the earth. Silvercrest! Damon's command rang out behind them. Defend your queen! The palace warriors met the charge, wolves shifting mid-run as steel clashed with claw. But Serafina could see immediately that conventional fighting wouldn't win this. The corruption made the shadow walkers stronger, faster, immune to pain. "I can heal it," she said urgently to Damon. "The corruption, I can burn it away with the blessing. But I need to get closer. Need to—" "We go together," Damon interrupted. He shifted partially, his canines lengthening, claws extending. "You cleanse, I protect. That's how this works." They plunged into the battle, moving as one. Where Serafina's silver light touched corrupted wolves, they screamed but not in pain, in relief. The corruption burned away like mist in sunlight, and beneath it, she saw normal wolves, terrified and grateful, immediately fleeing the battlefield. "They're not all willing followers," she realized, horror and hope mixing. "He's controlling them, forcing them to fight." "Then free them," Damon growled, tearing through any shadow walker that got too close. "Free, every single one." They fought their way deeper into the enemy forces, Serafina's power growing stronger with each corrupted wolf she cleansed. She could feel Damon through the bond, his fierce pride in her strength, his absolute trust that she could do this, his determination to keep her safe while she worked. But Malachar wasn't going to let them succeed so easily. He appeared before them in a burst of shadow, his corrupted power colliding with Serafina's blessing in an explosion that sent wolves flying in all directions. "You think you can undo what I've built?" Malachar snarled. "I've been perfecting this corruption for decades. Your little light show is nothing compared to—" Damon hit him like a freight train, the two alphas colliding with bone-shattering force. They were evenly matched in size, but Damon had something Malachar didn't, a mate whose power flowed through him, reinforcing every blow, healing every wound, almost as fast as it was inflicted. "You're strong," Malachar admitted, black blood dripping from his mouth. "Stronger than I expected. The bond did that, made you more than you were." His eyes found Serafina. "Imagine what you could be with me instead. Imagine what we could build together." "I'd rather die," Serafina said flatly. She raised her hands, silver light gathering in her palms. "You killed my family. You've spent 5 years hunting me. You corrupted thousands of innocent wolves for your own ambition. And you think I'd ever choose you? You don't have a choice," Malachar growled. He moved faster than should have been possible, his hand closing around Serafina's throat before Damon could intercept. The corruption poured from his touch, trying to force its way into her, to overwhelm the blessing with sheer dark power. Serafina screamed as agony ripped through her. The corruption was trying to twist her from the inside, to corrupt the blessing itself. She felt her scars burning, felt the divine power inside her recoiling from the taint. But then she felt something else. Damon, via their connection, his strength flooded into her, anchoring her against the corruption's assault. And more than that, his love, raw and fierce and absolute, a certainty that she was worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth everything. "You're not alone anymore," Damon's voice came through their bond. "Use my strength. Take everything I have. Together, we're stronger than his corruption." Serafina grabbed onto that connection, onto the love and strength flowing through it. The silver light exploded from her with renewed force, and this time, it wasn't just her power, it was theirs, combined, amplified. The corruption screamed as it burned away. Malachar staggered back, his hand smoking where it had touched her. "No," he gasped. "That's not possible. The blessing can't." "The blessing was always meant to be shared," Serafina said, understanding finally complete. "My mother tried to carry it alone, and it nearly killed her. But with a true mate, with someone willing to share the burden and the power equally, there's no limit to what it can do." She reached for Damon's hand, and their fingers interlaced, as they both raised their joined hands toward Malachar. Silver light and pure strength combined into something that was more than either alone, a power that was creation and protection given form. "This ends now," Damon said. "For my mother," Seraphina added. "For Ashen Vale. For every wolf you've corrupted and controlled." They released the power together. The silver light exploded outward in a wave that covered the entire battlefield. Everywhere it touched, corruption burned away, leaving only the truth beneath. Shadow walkers collapsed as the dark magic controlling them shattered. The blackened ground healed. Even the air itself seemed to clear, as if a poison they'd all been breathing was suddenly gone. Malachar tried to run, tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The light caught him, and he screamed, a sound of rage and despair combined. The corruption that had twisted his body for decades burned away, leaving behind a broken male, not even particularly large or threatening. Just a wolf who'd chosen power over everything else and lost himself in the process. "Please," he gasped, falling to his knees. "Please, I can't. Without the corruption, I'm nothing. You're finished," Damon said coldly. He looked at Seraphina. "Your choice. He killed your family. Nearly destroyed you. What justice do you demand?" Seraphina looked at the pathetic figure before her and felt pity and disgust at feeling pity for someone who'd caused so much suffering. "Prison," she said finally. "Let him live with what he's done, with what he chose to become. Let him spend the rest of his life knowing he could have had power through connection, but chose corruption instead." Damon nodded and signaled for guards to take Malachar away. The former Shadow Walker Alpha didn't resist, all fight gone from him. Around them, the battlefield was transforming. Freed from corruption, thousands of wolves were shifting back to human form, confused and grateful, and shocked to find themselves alive. Captain Kieran was already organizing efforts to help them, to provide food and shelter until they could return to their home territories. "It's over," Seraphina whispered, hardly able to believe it. "The battle is," Damon agreed. He turned to face her fully, and in his eyes, she saw everything he felt through the bond: pride, relief, love so fierce it took her breath away. "But our story is just beginning." He dropped to one knee before her, there in the middle of the battlefield, in front of thousands of witnesses. "Seraphina Ashenvale, Moon's chosen, bearer of the blessing, and the other half of my soul, will you do me the honor of accepting your place as my queen? Not because of prophecy or political necessity, but because I'm asking, because I choose you, freely and without reservation." Seraphina felt tears stream down her face, happy ones this time. "You already asked me this. The ritual bound our wolves," Damon interrupted. "But I want to ask you, Seraphina, the female, not just the Moon's chosen. Will you stand beside me? Not behind me or beneath me, but as my equal partner in all things? Will you help me be the king I want to be instead of the one I was forced to become? Will you show me what it means to rule with heart as well as strength?" Through the bond, Seraphina felt the truth of his words, felt the vulnerability it took for him to ask this in front of everyone. The proud, untouchable Alpha King was offering her everything he was, everything he could be. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "Yes, to all of it. To being your queen, your mate, your equal, to building something better together than either of us could alone." Damon kissed her then, and it was nothing like the rushed, desperate contact during the ritual. This was a promise, a claiming, a celebration. The bond between them sang with joy, and the silver light that had been just hers now belonged to both of them, pulsing with their combined heartbeat. When they finally broke apart, the army, both Silver Crest's warriors and the freed Shadow Walkers, was cheering. Priestess Mora stood at the front, tears streaming down her face, a smile of pure satisfaction on her weathered features. The prophecy is fulfilled, Mora called out. The moon's chosen has found her alpha. The blessing is secured. And from this day forward, let all know that Silvercrest is protected not just by the strongest alpha, but by the love between two souls who chose each other against all odds. The cheering intensified. Serafina looked around at the faces surrounding them, not with mockery or pity, but with genuine joy and respect. She'd come to this kingdom as a debt payment, a scarred bride no one wanted. Now she stood as queen, as the moon's chosen, as Damon's mate and equal. Think you can handle being queen? Damon murmured against her ear. Think you can handle having a queen who argues with you? Serafina countered. I'm counting on it, he said, and she felt his amusement through the bond. Someone needs to keep me honest. Then I suppose we should get started, Serafina said. She looked out at the valley, at the work that lay ahead, rebuilding, healing, helping the freed wolves return home, establishing new alliances. It was overwhelming, but through the bond, she felt Damon's confidence in her, his certainty that they could handle anything together. Hand in hand, the Alpha King and his Moon Queen walked back toward their palace, toward their future, toward the life they would build together. Behind them, the full moon shone bright and clear, the goddess's approval evident in every ray of silver light. The story of the scarred bride and the cruel king was over. The story of the Moon Queen and her Alpha King was just beginning. The royal council chamber had been redesigned. Where once there had been a single throne on a raised dais, now two sat side by side at the same level, a statement that power in Silvercrest was shared equally between its king and queen. Serafina sat in hers, reviewing reports from the freed Shadow Walker territories. Many had requested to join Silvercrest formally, seeking the stability and protection they'd been denied under Malakar's rule. It was good news, but it came with complications, resources to allocate, borders to redraw, old prejudices to overcome. Your Majesty, Captain Kieran said, entering with his usual military precision, the delegation from the Northern Reach has arrived. They're requesting an audience. Valdis's father, Damon said, entering behind Kieran. Even after 3 months, Serafina's heart still skipped when she saw him. Through the bond, she felt his matching reaction to her presence that would probably never fade. Let me guess, he wants his daughter released from the dungeons. Among other things, Kieran confirmed. Tell him we'll see him tomorrow, Serafina said, and that Valdis's sentence stands. She betrayed the crown, collaborated with our enemies, and nearly started a war. Her house can send a different representative if they want favorable trade terms. Kieran bowed and left. Damon moved to stand behind Serafina's throne, his hands settling on her shoulders in a gesture that had become familiar. You're getting good at this, he murmured. The queenly decree, the political maneuvering. I'm learning from the best, Serafina replied, tilting her head back to look up at him. Though I notice you let me handle that entire exchange. Because you didn't need me to, Damon said simply. That's what being equals means, trusting each other to handle what we're best at. Serafina stood and turned to face him properly. Her scars still glowed faintly in certain lights, would always carry the moon's mark, but she'd stopped thinking of them as flaws. Now they were reminders of everything she'd survived, everything she'd become. Do you ever regret it? She asked. That the ritual bound us so completely that you can never hide from me? Never keep secrets? Damon pulled her close, and through the bond, she felt his answer before he spoke it. Absolute certainty, fierce joy, and love without reservation. Not for a single moment, he said. You terrify me, frustrate me, challenge me, and you're the best thing that ever happened to me. The moon knew exactly what she was doing when she chose us for each other. Serafina smiled, rising on her toes to kiss him. The moon chose well. The moon, Damon agreed against her lips, chose perfectly. Outside the window, even though it was midday, the moon was visible in the sky, a pale ghost, watching over the kingdom it had blessed, with two souls finally made whole.